There's barely anything more beautiful to me than the sound of the bird song of the Irish countryside. But these days, if I want to hear those sounds of my childhood, I need this. Like many of you, I was lucky enough to grow up surrounded by farmland filled with wildflowers, rivers abounding with trout, enchanted by the songs of the curlew and the cuckoo. Am I just being nostalgic? A romantic harping back to a past that has no place in the modern world?
Or is it possible to have a modern, prosperous society and ensure nature has the space to flourish too?
I've come to the Cummeragh Mountains in County Waterford to meet Dr. Liam Lycett of the National Biodiversity Data Centre. I want to know if I'm just imagining it or if things really have become a lot quieter.
If you were here a number of years ago, you'd hear the cry of the Curlew perhaps, you'd hear skylarks singing, meadow pipits. They're gone at the moment, there's very little life there. And we're in a fortunate position now that we're actually able to quantify that loss. We're able to say definitively like how populations are changing and how they're faring, which is very important really in terms of trying to help conservation.
And if we have that scientific data, we're starting to collect that now in Ireland, has it told us anything so far? What has it revealed?
Well, it's really dramatic actually, because for the species that we've done a formal conservation assessment, we find that between a quarter and a fifth of all the species that are found in that group are threatened with extinction in Ireland.
A quarter to a fifth?
Of all species.
25% of all the species you've measured are threatened with extinction.
That's right. That's a really dramatic figure, and if that's not a wake-up call to people, you know what else is.
What is driving that? Why are we seeing that?
Well, I think in a nutshell what we're doing is we're not making space for wildlife. We're not managing the countryside to give this wildlife a space for it to thrive, and that's across all aspects of government policy and public policy. So we need to have measures in place that will actually nurture and help wildlife to thrive.
25% of all the plants, animals, insects, birds, all the species that they've assessed are actually facing extinction, imminent threat of extinction, 25%. That's in Ireland, that's here.
It's hard to get our heads around the implications of this kind of biodiversity loss. A good way to track what's really going on is through our bird life.
And of all the birds under threat, the one whose call I really miss is the distinctive cry of the curlew. A bird that is a beacon for all that we stand to lose. Its call is a welcome sound that has been heard across the Irish countryside for thousands of years. I can't help but balk at the fact that since the 1980s, Ireland's breeding population of this iconic bird has fallen by over 80%.
While they're still a common sight along our coasts in winter, these coastal curlew are visitors from Northern Europe who come to take advantage of our mild winters. But as a breeding bird in Ireland, the decline of the curlew is such that its extinction now seems almost certain.
Come to Donegal to meet with Anita Donaghy from Birdwatch Ireland. She's going to explain to me a little bit more, I hope, about what exactly is going on with curlew and why they've declined to such an extent.
Anita Donaghy and Daniel Maloney have been carrying out surveys to locate breeding pairs of curlew and target conservation measures to protect them. I'm joining them here on the outskirts of Glenveigh National Park to find out more.
Hello, Anita.
Hello, Anja.
This is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
This is one of the places where you survey for curlew.
Yes, so there's a pair of curlew nesting here. This is our second visit. Normally we would survey 3 times during the nesting season. This would be our second visit. So there was a pair here on our first visit, so we're just doing our second visit now to check that they're still here. Curlew in Ireland, we find them principally either in boggy habitats like this where there's wet ground, and also farmland.
So the curlew would be it'd be in here, it'd be nesting. What, just make a little nest in here?
Yeah, so they'll just use the vegetation to create a little cup, probably maybe in a tussock.
The curlew have distinctive, long, curved bills, which allows them to probe into soft, wet ground for the bugs on which they feed.
You can see all the variety of different grasses and different types of rushes and everything, and in this there'll be lots of insects and lots of food for the curlew chicks in particular.
For the chicks?
Yes.
It's good feeding to raise
Yes,
a brood.
exactly.
I've been hearing lots about losses of all sorts of wildlife and birds as well, and curlew have been really, I suppose, startled by the decline.
The principal reason is loss of habitat, really. So a lot of this would have happened during the second half of the last century when there was a lot of intensification of farmland and a lot of land was drained. That would have been one of the principal causes of loss. And also peat extraction, industrial scale peat extraction, and even ongoing now commercial peat extraction on the bogs would also have caused declines. Because curlew nest on the ground, they're vulnerable to having their eggs taken by things like foxes in particular. So that's an additional factor on top of the habitat loss that's occurring at a wider landscape level.
So from what Anita has told me, it's clear that if breeding curlew are to survive in Ireland, they're going to need help.
I'm bang in the middle of Ballydangan Bog in County Roscommon. Now I know that peat bogs are really important breeding habitat for curlew.
So I've come to meet Patrick Dunning, who is a member of the Moor Gun Club, a group of the most unlikely conservationists.
Well, I noticed from being a hunter to start off with that the grouse started to get scarce in the other bogs, and even the curlew started to get scarce. Less and less of them seem to be to a stage that we probably gave up hunting grouse 20 years ago, and that's when we first noticed it.
And then you decided to do something about that?
Yeah, I decided that we'd have a go at having a project here on the bog. So the first thing, by chance, we had a meeting with Bornamona, which are the owners of the site, and I'd say they were a bit sceptical or shocked that a shooting organisation or a hunting organisation would approach them in relation to starting a conservation project on one of their sites.
And what triggered you to want to do that? Because it is an unusual thing for a group of hunters to come and say, we want to protect this bog.
It's for who's coming behind us, especially my own kids and kids in the area. As a hunter, you're also a bird lover and an animal lover. Like, you notice all the birds. You don't want to see anything going into decline or anything becoming extinct.
And did you ever shoot a curlew?
No. I never had any interest in shooting a curlew, no.
But the red grouse would be a favourite?
The red grouse were never shot in numbers. I shot an occasional grouse when there were plenty and more. They had more habitat earlier. I shot a grouse, yeah.
And what would be different about the bog before and after the project for the curlew?
When we started the project here, we had one confirmed pair and one possible pair that we didn't know whether they were breeding or not. And this year now at our survey, we have 7 confirmed pairs of breeding curlews here on the site.
Amazing. Why do you think that difference?
Habitat management to start off with, habitat restoration and predator management.
The work that Patrick and the Moor Gun Club are doing here is brilliant. Day in and day out, they protect the curlew and red grouse from predators. But I want to know more about what they're doing to restore the entire bog.
And what are you doing here in the bog to improve the habitat?
We blocked the drains. The drains that were here since the early 80s. We have those blocked now. We've in excess of 4,000 plugs put in the drain to stop the water draining off the bog.
Well, and why is that important?
Well, the bog retains more water and the pools retain water in the bog, so there's more insect production for the birds, for the curlew especially, and for the grouse.
So this is a dam, and this is here just to block up these drains, stop the water from flowing out. And that way, the whole bog can recover. It maintains its wetness, and we've got species like Curlew coming back in here. When you look out over a bog like this, you might not think there's much going on. But when you get down close into the ground, there's the most amazing plant life. We've got loads of different sphagnum mosses, they're the bog builders. And we've got the heathers, we've got sedges, and we've even got this little sundew. Because it's so difficult to get nutrients in the bog, this guy has adapted a really special strategy to eat. It eats insects. When a little insect lands on its leaf, it's got all these sticky tentacles around every leaf that closes in over that insect. And then it secretes its digestive enzymes into that insect. And all that's left after a few days are the legs and the wings. And who'd have thought that in the middle of a bog in County Roscommon, we'd find all these little carnivorous plants. Even though we've lost so many of our peat bogs, and I know there's exceptions like here where the community have really come together to do amazing work to protect this bog, we know that Curlew don't depend exclusively on peat bogs for breeding habitat. They also nest in damp, rushy pastures all over the wider countryside. So why is it that there's such a severe decline?
I've come to the rich pastures of the southeast to meet Darragh Hulacan from Teagasc. We're in the middle of a big, productive green field. In the past, farmland like this would have been a good habitat for Curlew. Now, that's not the case, and I'd like to understand why.
From a biodiversity point of view, it wouldn't be brilliant from a biodiversity point of view. So this field is a good example of an improved agricultural field. Over the last 40, 50 years, there's been a lot of improvement in agriculture from a production point of view. So fields like this would be representative. So you can see that it's been sown with just 1 or 2 species. So whereas 40, 50 years ago, this would have been a smaller field size with maybe 50 or 60 different species. Here you can see it's dominated by one grass species. So in this case, it's perennial ryegrass, which would be typical of most improved grassland throughout Ireland. And this species is fantastic from a production point of view. It's very responsive to nutrients and fertilizers, so it provides great yield for stock and for animals. But from a biodiversity point of view, it outcompetes most other plant species. And also, on a continuous rotation or a continuous reseeding of these crops, the seed bank becomes depaupered, so there's less seeds of wildflowers and traditional herbs available here, such that 40 or 50 years ago, where we would have 60 or 70 different grasses and herbs in a field such as this, now we're down to 4 or 5 in the main field itself.
So while there would have been a lot of wildlife and a lot of diversity in this location previously, there isn't now?
Well, there's less than there would have been, than there would have been 40 or 50 years ago. Also, the field size would have been smaller. We would have had more boundaries within the field itself, whereas now, with intensification, there has been a pressure to increase field size and increase production of areas that were typically more marginal. There's incentives for production from a profitable point of view. There's incentives to sell more milk and to sell more beef. But we also need incentives for producing more biodiversity, producing more animals, producing more birds, producing more plants. And there must be incentives therefore for those farmers who traditionally have them and who currently have a high variety of different animals and birds within their fields. We must provide, if society wants it, and I believe we should have it, that there should be sufficient incentives to encourage those farmers to maintain existing habitats and to enhance habitats where they want to do so.
Ambitious growth targets for Irish agriculture aim to increase beef and dairy production by 50% over the next 10 years. This kind of intensification of beef and dairy farming cannot be achieved without serious environmental consequences. Unless there's a major overhaul in how we do things, wildlife will continue to lose out.
I'm sure there's thousands of farmers, tens of thousands of farmers across the country who'd prefer to be farming in harmony with nature. And where there's really special habitats, what would it take to make that a reality? What kind of support would they actually need to stop this loss?
So I'm back in Donegal to meet one such farmer, Michael O'Shea, who's doing his best to adapt his farming practices to protect the curlew on his land.
I only realised 3 years ago when a good friend of mine came to me and said that he seen the curlew on my land. It was good to see an endangered species when I got it explained to me that this bird was very rare. I suppose I thought it would be good if we could protect it or do something maybe to enhance the numbers or whatever. I was put in contact then with Birdwatch Ireland, and they sent around one of their advisors who gave me a plan how to protect and enhance the habitat for the curlew. And really the biggest one was delaying the fodder harvesting until after the 15th of July. Predator control is very important. There would be a lot of foxes around. If they get near the nest, they destroy it too.
Up until recently, the conservation project here in Donegal gave farmers like Michael and his father access to ecologists. That made a real difference to their ability to protect the curlew here.
I could call up the ecologist and he would be able to give me his opinion, or have the answers.
This scheme was scrapped, and although there are still financial incentives in place for farmers, the important element, the expert advice of ecologists, is no longer available.
It was brilliant because they had an advisor there that I could contact anytime.
The declining trends in nature I've seen here in Donegal are sadly reflected across the country. As we've seen, when fields and meadows are reseeded, fertilised and transformed into grassland monocultures, curlews lose out. When peat bogs are drained and harvested, the curlews lose out. When mountain slopes are planted up with forestry, the curlew lose out. And then the small and highly fragmented population that remains is vulnerable to predators like foxes, mink and crows.
And so we say farewell to the call of the curlew. But does it have to be this way?
It seems that curlew is the charismatic beacon for so much of what we're pushing over the edge.
Places like this, the wild shores of Lough Corrib in County Galway, and the islands that are beyond the reach of progress. This is where nature still thrives.
And there are as many as 17 pairs of breeding curlew around Lough Corrib alone. Is there some sign here that we can halt the loss? Maybe we can even begin to reverse the decline. Well, I know of some projects and initiatives that are trying to do just that. I want to find what hope there is for Ireland's wild nature.
I'm going to meet Brendan Dunford, who's pioneered an innovative conservation scheme in the Burren. Farmers here are leading the way in how to work with nature, and the results have been impressive.
Brendan, I've been learning a lot about the loss of biodiversity and the decline, how nature's on the decline. What strikes me about this project here is really working together with landowners to stem that decline. What would you say has been the key to the success of this project?
We basically asked the farmers what do they need to do on their land to improve the environment, and obviously we offered them training around that, but they make the decisions, and then we pay them based on the performance. And that's one of the successes of the scheme. The fundamental success of the programme is that we work, the farmers, the Department of Agriculture, the conservationists, we all work together in a very proactive way to do work in an SAC. You need all sorts of permissions from Forestry Service, National Parks and Wildlife Service, and the Archaeological Service in some cases as well. But we're there to provide that professional support. It's about three things. It's about the head, it's about the heart, and of course it's about the pocket as well. We say to farmers that are training programmes, you're looking after this land here, not for Brussels, not for the National Parks and Wildlife Service. You're looking after it for you, your family, the people that went before you, the people that are coming after you, and for your community. And I think farmers respond well to that they're doing it for themselves. We have data to prove that it's improving the environment, And we also have a lot of really good socioeconomic indicators going with that as well. Improved incomes, better socialisation opportunities and so on and so forth. So it can actually work, and the burn is proof of the pudding, if you like.
One of the farmers in the Burren Farming for Conservation scheme is Pat Nagle, who's more than happy to talk to me about how the scheme has changed the way that he farms.
It changed it because there's more emphasis in the farm, the ecology, let's say, even the stock. All has changed.
And the changes, I suppose, made when, in the 80s or in the 90s, you were becoming more intensive in how you're managing the land.
That's right. And then we had gone to that stage, we were starting to feed bales of silage and that kind of thing. And then when the Burren Life came in, they saw that the harm that was being done by the silage being fed on the pavements and on the winterages, that should be stopped.
When the practices started to change, that's when it became a problem for all the wildlife that was here. And that the Burren programme was encouraging you to manage it back as it was beforehand.
Exactly.
Pat has taken me to meet his son Oliver, who, like his father, has embraced farming in harmony with nature. Not only has the landscape and wildlife benefited, but they've also improved farm outputs. It goes to show how, with properly tailored supports and good ecological advice, both man and nature can benefit.
Hello, Anja.
How are you? This is your son Oliver.
Here's the boss now. It's the new boss.
It has taken 5 years to master the grazing on the farm. I had to increase the stock numbers by 50%.
Okay.
And
so that's having more cattle in each field?
More cattle in each field.
And what's the importance of getting the grazing right, like too much grazing or too little grazing?
If you don't graze it properly and get it down to the floor, the flowers won't come up afterwards. It's very important.
Okay.
The tighter you graze it, the better the flowers have a chance of coming back onto the farm.
Okay. And if you don't graze it enough?
If you don't graze it enough, all you will do is the foliage will die back into the ground and stay in a mat, and it won't allow the light into the floor. You really wanted to see would you get the most out of the farm. How far could you push it?
In terms of productivity?
In terms of productivity as well. That's the one thing that that this scheme has that other schemes don't. We actually have productivity in this farm because we increased our numbers.
So you're getting more outputs, you're getting more productive, more cattle.
And we have no harm done.
And I can see you're really proud of this, of what you've achieved here, rightly so. If the programme wasn't in place and that level of support, what do you think this would be now? With the wildflowers that the Burren is famous for, would they be here?
Listen, the programme opened our eyes to what we already had.
Yeah.
It gave us the encouragement to do something about it. It put us in charge of our own plans. We picked the work. The programme sanctioned it. And if we did a good job, they paid us for it.
Amazing.
Everyone's a winner here.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why we don't have more of it, but it offers such a solution for conservation and farming to work together.
Yeah, look, it's a hard marriage, but you have to work at a marriage. You really do. Mm-hmm. And if there's something at the end of the tunnel and it's worth fighting for, it should be fought for. Everyone around the country should be fighting for their own little corners.
Brilliant. I think you've inspired me anyway here in the Burren. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I've been all around the country and seen a lot of places where Mother Nature's on the run and solutions are thin on the ground. But here in the Burren, I've met a group of people who've been inspired to turn this situation around. And they in turn are showing us how, with hard work, dedication and expert knowledge, biodiversity can be brought back from the brink. And farmers are benefiting too.
But it's not just farming we're talking about here. It's all the ways we use and manage this land of ours. It's great to see what's happening here in the Burren, but unfortunately this is the exception rather than the rule. Nature is the basis of our prosperity. We know what we need to do to protect it, but the question is, will we do it? And will we do it in time?